ISA is very proud of our partnership with GIZ.
So innovation needs a trustful environment.
How can the rest of the world leverage Germany's knowledge?
Call us. We stay ready at any time.
It's a pleasure for me to welcome Uwe Gehlen here. Uwe is formerly the head of economic cooperation in the German embassy in Delhi. He comes from the Ministry of Economic Cooperation in the German Republic. But more importantly, he's been a development practitioner for a long time. He's been with the World Bank, he's been with GIZ, and the good thing is you ask him a problem and he can guide you in the right direction. He is also, as far as we are concerned, our go-to person, ISA's go-to person, as far as all kinds of issues, but particularly collaboration with Germany are concerned. Welcome, Uwe.
Thank you very much, Ajay.
Uwe, given your long development background and also given Germany's leadership in bringing solar to people's homes and houses and communities, where do you see solar being there globally as far as energy is concerned?
Thank you very much, Ajay, first for the very kind introduction, and I try to do my very best actually to fulfill this role. When you look on the global landscape in regard to solar, it's a very interesting comparison you could do when you just transfer yourself to 20 years ago, when this was a tremendous, innovative, risky, technically complex issue. When you look now, it's for everybody, and so without any question, it's the way to go, because we went a tremendously impressive pathway to that. So the thing what you do as a kind of a policy advisor on change management, when you just take this up, the whole knowledge you got in the last 20 years, and then you transfer it for the next 20 years,
right.
You get the impression that it's accelerating in a tremendous way. So solar will be the future, beside of other technologies, but mainly solar. You see the growing market, and we are counting now. When you believe in that, actually, I started at a very early stage when we were thinking about small solar panels just on your rooftop,
yes.
And there was the KfW 100,000 rooftop program, yes. Just in the early stage. We now speaking about just bringing about over 400 gigawatt on solar, right, to the market and to the use every year. And in 2030, when I'm not mistaken, or 2030, we are talking about 1 terabyte.
Yes.
And when you look at this, what that means, our world will become shiny somehow. And I think this is without any doubt, because when you look on the pure numbers, on the accessibility, on the affordability, solar is developing much faster than other technologies. Solar together with other things, like storage, for example.
Right.
What we have.
So, given Germany's leadership, you were the first in the world to push solar. You talked of the KfW's 100,000 roof program. How do you see Germany today in a leadership role? What are the kinds of things it is doing to make this kind of a picture happen globally?
I think the biggest advantage we had was somehow we took up the risk at a very early stage. And we took it up with the capacity in a technology perspective to understand and develop the issue. I think this is a very classic thing Germany could do. When you look on the pure size of our economy and the importance of just expanding renewable energies, we are not the ones who could guide the whole world in the final extent out of these issues we have. But we are the ones who are going to stay on the side, advising based on the knowledge we accumulated. Just to give you an example, I had recently a discussion with a KfW person who worked on technical expertise in different country contexts. And we visited one interesting site in India, because this is out of my actual assignment. And I asked him, how does it go forward? And he said, listen, it's a very interesting lifespan experience from my side. I started my career at a very early stage advising the regulatory and other frameworks in Germany on how to apply. And I saw all the mistakes we did in Germany and all the advantages we. Then I moved to another place and I went to the same pathway, and now I'm here and I'm facing it. The important thing is, what you have to understand is, we're getting more and better informed over the while. So we're accelerating this development. And I think this is what Germany can contribute to the world. Based on our experience, based on the advisory services we gave all over the world, based on our network we have, for example, with KfW and GIZ in Development Cooperation, but also with our experts in research, but also with our small and medium enterprises spread it all over the world. If we accumulate all of this knowledge, we are tremendously supportive and helpful just for accelerating development.
Uwe, let me follow this up with two questions. The first relates to the amazing dissemination program that you're doing across the world. Yeah. And the second has to do with the technology development that is occurring in Germany itself.
Yeah.
So first, how is it that you go about accelerating the process of knowledge transfer? As you said, hopefully transferring what worked together with what didn't work. That's the first part. How do you enable it?
I think the easiest explanation on that is we established a long time ago different pathways for accumulating and working on knowledge and distribution in a, I would not say in a central steered way, but it really in a capacity development understanding. As a development practitioner, you know, as you said, I mentioned serving for the World Bank as well as working with the UN system. The accumulation and contribution of knowledge is always an issue. It's no dependency in which sector you have it. And the interesting thing is a lot of actors have just creating knowledge, and then they're looking for the system where they can apply.
Yeah.
Germany is a little bit different suited, and I think it has historical reasons that we have maintained all the time a knowledge distributed system in place, which is waiting on the commissioning of this specific way. And this is namely on the development pathway. It's our GIZ. That's a capacity development instrument which is used all over the world. And it's used by different branches of the German government. But it's also used by the European Union or other, like the Swiss or the Dutch. Having such a network in place, which is, you know, working on its own, makes it very easy for you to adapt to country and substance challenges immediately, because you always do based on this network. We do this now, for example, for India in a collaborative modality, but by launching a triangular collaboration, which is not in the field of technology, but it's because we have this system, we can do so. On the other hand, you know, Germany has a tremendously long history, but this is not an alone-standing thing in developing science and in science and research networks, and mentioning Fraunhofer Institute, for example. I had a long history backwards working on solar, for example, but also working always in a global network on that. So we have not a disconnection between research and distribution. It's very strong working together, and a lot of people making use of that.
Yeah. We are very proud, ISA is very proud of our partnership with GIZ and the fact that we can utilize the GIZ infrastructure across the world to provide the kind of, as you rightly said, the kind of training which is adapted to local conditions. It's also very interesting to note that you have a very rather successful, and the Fraunhofer Institutes are an example of relating research to their commercialization.
Yeah.
What are the kinds of solar research that is going on in Germany?
Speaking about the connection I mentioned there, I left the private sector out.
Yes,
and that was just by mistake. If you see the whole configuration of Germany in regard of just providing the necessity at the baseline for our economic sustainable growth, and this is the important thing, it's not about the pure numbers, it's also about the sustainability. the German industry is configured and much more than other countries in the way that small and medium enterprises have a tremendous role of that, providing labor, but also just innovation. And another branch which came up, not recently, but it's not so old, is when you look on the startup environment. I think we have a very good baseline, but it's actually in the interaction, it's a challenge for us to have this constantly running in this direction and accelerating it. And we are not the only ones. Everybody has it in somehow. So innovation needs a trustful environment where it could configure it and where it could grow. The thing is, what we have seen over the last years is we were innovative in solar technology, we were forward-looking, we were in production, but then the market moved somehow. And this is still a challenge for us because we know we need a higher diversification of this one in production, but Germany would not be the main driver in that one. India could become, but not only India, and this is something what is supported from our side. I think you can say for Germany we stepped back in the second row. So working on the innovative component of that, and on the research and the distribution of the knowledge, and we are still the main manufacturer on the machines you need.
Correct.
And this is not only regarding solar technology; it's across the board. This is the nature of my country, and somehow to be the engineer of development. I think this is where we sit good. And then the other question would be, what we are facing always, and not only in solar, is how do we get the dependency, certain specific technologies which developed over the last decade, a little bit, how do we get away from that and have more, and that's something we learned out of the recent crisis.
Right, absolutely.
And starting with Corona, but the other ones as well.
So then how do you see the global partnerships that are needed to push solar across the world?
It's tremendous important. I think one of the biggest challenges we have to steer competition into a healthy direction. For a competitive market environment, to keep it running in a proper way just based on common goals, you need to have first an understanding about the common goal. And the common goal could not be market expansion per se. It's a development impact and the climate impact. That's why we run this. And
absolutely.
And for this one, you need a base where you discuss this issue, and in this critical environment, which is created always, you need to have the opportunity to develop a common interest and a common. This is where ISER, for example, comes in. When I look on the plenary sessions, when all of these different country representatives from all over the world, from very small countries up to the largest one, when they are just put into a situation where they have to be very keen on guiding questions ISER provided for them, and they have to commit themselves, this is a wonderful momentum, honestly spoken. And from there on, you take up the operationalization. And then the question about the cash flow, the money flow comes up, and all of these. But first of all, you need this common, and this is what is in this day so difficult. But I see the work of ISER is tremendously helpful and guiding in a very constructive dialogue in different times on this specific.
Well, thank you very much, Uwe. But let me step back and ask you, how can the rest of the world leverage Germany's knowledge?
Call us. We stay ready at any time. No, honestly, I think one of our strong commitment is our government is, and it's not the actual government alone, it's a historic pathway, but the actual government, more than anybody else, is strongly committed on enlarging that. The Energiewende
Energiewende was a marvelous piece.
And we still in the making, and it won't be ready soon, but actually we have the numbers on place, we have so strong political commitments. Some people misunderstood the work in that as a cost issue, and they don't see the investment perspective on that. And I think it creates so much just opportunities for new types of labor, for new investment flows, and for new enterprises. It's a wonderful thing to go. Where should you go instead? This one is, it's a high word, but we support, saving the world in the final extent with something where we make also money out of it and create labor. So how could it become better? I think we are very much advanced in that one. Also, we're facing a lot of critical discussions, like you have them all over the world. Germany will stay this pathway, I'm absolutely sure. Other countries, like the really big ones, sometimes I have the feeling they're just more short-term thinking and opportunistic. And I don't count India in that, but it's where we have to stay as a guiding principle and agent within the discussion.
How do crises play in this? So, for example, during the COVID, we saw that there was a move towards creating more LNG stations in Germany. So, what is the kind of political buy-in that the energy Wende has?
I think now you're asking me about a paradoxon. That's as a social scientist who is just advising on change management, because that's my main responsibility in somehow. You understand and learn over the while that crisis per se could be a very helpful accelerator of change. The biggest advantages in human mankind are a consequence of the facing of a crisis. And Germany itself has a lot of examples. We wouldn't stay in gender where we stay now without what happened in the mid of last century and the impact it had on the labor force, which just brought women into labor force. And I myself, what you don't know, I moved to Washington to the World Bank, to the board of the bank in summer 2007. Shortly after that, we had the FFF crisis. And I was just involved in just making the World Bank ready on that one. So far, I'm not really fearing crisis like most of people, but the question then would come up in the responsibility to steer it through the right path. And this is where we actually stay now. When you see, you mentioned the LPG terminals on one hand, what you also have to mention, if you fly into Germany these days, you're flying over a solar-plastered country. Because the big LPG terminals is something which makes it the message to here as well, and it's bolstering our situation in crisis response. But what you see is acceleration of solar panel all over the country. So when I go I go every half year and somehow, and every time I'm surprised and impressed how far we went. And these are the smaller actors. These are the different households who are just doing that. But in the big scale, just to let you know, we have one German newspaper, Die Zeit, which displays every day how the composition of energy is in Germany. You can see that. And solar makes now, today, also yesterday, 72% of the energy mix. But it's very sunny days now in Germany, to be very clear. But it's when you compare this to numbers just 2 years ago, it's mind-blowing what is going on.
Does the interconnection of Germany with, say, Norway, which has a huge hydro potential and therefore can potentially act as a storage device or as a battery, does that help in increasing the percentage of renewables in the grid?
Yeah, the question would be a little bit of, sorry, I said 72 solar, that's wrong, 72 renewable.
Yes,
but solar, I think 45% of that. Yeah, it's an interesting question which refers a little bit to something which is, and Norway is not the best example for that because it's not member of the European Union. But when you look on transnational grid management, and in Europe we are very far, and before the strong, before the Energiewende already, we started with the integration of the grid system all over Europe to maintain within the European Union energy security, because it's so important for us economically. When you look for India as an example, because I have now the chance to look into it, it's very much advanced also in reaching out now and getting forward with energy grid integration. But it's quite more challenging when you have it here in this country context than you have it in the European Union. But we understand and we feel this as a very important contribution, because energy has different cost measures all over the place. And one of the big challenges in Germany now, for example, is to bring energy from the north to the south.
Correct. Absolutely.
And we see how this feeds into the local political economy. You're smiling already. I see you following the discussions very closely. And you can see this everywhere. This is what we have to cope with.
Similarly, for example, when we look at India, one of the greatest problems is that the center of energy generation shifts from the east to the west and the south. That creates more political challenges than almost anything else.
I don't know if you're aware, actually, and this is now the example of India, but it's interesting because it's such a huge and large market and so diverse when you look on the different states, and you can compare that in the global range. It's a very interesting, also for us, system to work with to get better understanding. One of the biggest contributions of the German Development Corporation is the KfW component in financing through concessional lending, the green energy corridor.
The corridors.
And this is what we have just when we have to tell German Parliament what we are doing exactly, and then we have to come up with this whole storyline.
Right.
And to look very deeply into that and analytically.
So as far as the ISA member countries are concerned, obviously transmission lines are important, obviously. But then the land where the solar panels and renewables will be put are important, because that's where you'll draw the transmission lines from.
Yeah.
But the other problem that we have is that when you look at round-the-clock renewable energy, solar plus wind plus batteries or whatever it is, the total capital cost is high. Even though the cost of energy may be less, but the capital cost is high.
Yeah.
This creates a problem of the entire economy and seeing how we can push more money into renewables while not affecting the economy as a whole. This is a challenge.
But Ajay, the question is what you compare with what?
Okay.
What you're referring to mainly is the absolute cost for expanding the provision of energy in general in an emerging economy context.
Correct.
That's a challenge we have in every regard. It's how we set up, economically. The one thing which is bolstering that out of the box is energy efficiency, and we haven't discussed through that. And it's interesting how many opportunities we would have with a stronger say on energy efficiency, how we cut down, for example, when you look on provision of lights and so on by LED technology, and what it meant, it's the curve goes slower in the consumption. So the costs they are there. The interesting thing is the question of the gap between solar technology related to other more traditionally one, and it stays a little bit more expensive, I think, so also because you're not counting in the real costs in a lot of the traditional energy provisions. In Germany, as an example, we went to the structural modification regarding coal. And this was tremendously costly. Also because it was difficult for us to do this structural adaptation with all of this different social impact and economic impact. But we went through it and we were able to invest in that. When you look on the landscape in Germany now, a lot of regions look much better. Air is much better. The life quality is much better. And this is something which came in. So you see all this transformation is more investment than a cost issue. Investment in better life conditions. So in solar we fall a little bit short all over the way to understand all of these multi-dimensional components. If we would become a little bit less ideological and more, let's say, economic driven in the purest way, we would understand that it's not so costly. In addition to that, the cost of providing solar technology becomes lower and lower and lower. It's a very interesting thing. It's getting somehow cheaper.
Yeah.
And I really look forward. I had seen some numbers, on just combining solar technology with the shrinking price dimension of energy storage by battery.
Yeah.
You see that a lot of people in these days who are doing the arguments have no idea where they will be in 5 years from now. It will be much more difficult
Correct.
to argue against it. And I think this is also one of the advantages as a development practitioner. We see these numbers already coming, and we can adapt our discussion on that one. And I'm very much looking forward to have this discussion in 5 years.
Uwe, many, many, many thanks for being here, for this conversation, and for helping us all move ahead on solar energy. Thank you all very much, and let me, on behalf of all of you, thank Uwe for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ajay, to give me the chance and to having me, and I'm very much looking forward on the festival.
Yes. Thank you.